Indeed, but it looks like game number 2 is ready. This is a best of 5, the lower bracket finals of Golden League round 1. And we have Beasty here with the English against Vortix's Malians. Vortix with a 1-point lead so far as we head to Rocky Canyon.
That's right. Some people are like, BO3? What? No, we turned it to BO5. We converted. We wall-lolled it across. But Vortix an early lead. Now on a Civ that he's dominating with in this round 1. You have to question whether Beasty could find himself early on match point with his back up against the walls. We'll have to find out. You know, first thing I'm looking at, because I always forget, because one of them doesn't have trade and one of them does. This is not the ponds one. This one, it's not Dry River. This map does have trade, so that will be an option for the Malians.
It's such a confusing thing. The two maps looks very similar, but one of them doesn't have trade and the other one does. So whenever you go into this game, it's like, oh, is this the map with the trade or without? Because obviously that's a big factor for the Malians. And this is a map which does feature trade. So as we discussed prior to the game, it's hard to justify Beasty going very eco-heavy with the English because Vortix will just be more than happy to take it and go for a trade.
Yeah, and also the other thing, by the way, big shout out to Biddlin. I need to club him over the head with a bottle or something. This map also has ponds in the center. Just like Dry River. Less ponds, admittedly, but sometimes confusing. Just to point out people, you're not going to see any fishing play. Those ponds, they are neutered. They do not have any sort of fishes swimming around in them. So don't expect anyone to go greedy in the center.
Indeed, they won't do that. Now, looking at the hunt spawns, that's actually a very interesting one to take a look at, especially because Beasty's hunt is on the front and all the way in the corner. Now, neither of those are very well defendable, and that could also make it a little bit more difficult to have a very efficient early game here with the English, and obviously you can go for the farm transition, but more and more we're seeing players actually using the English hunt to justify or to facilitate a faster castle age up.
Exactly that. I mean, the logic is still holds up. Same with normal farms, right? People like to think that you always want to do English farms because it's safe, it's protected, but it's still 37 wood per villager, right? And the increased gains you get don't really start to unlock until mid-feudal into Castle Age compared to deer. So if the deer are there as a proposition, especially if you go in for very cheap research to increase the gathering rate by 15%, it's always going to be the better option pre-Castle Age.
Indeed, it looks like Beasty is going to go for a council hole over here, so no king shenanigans for the time being. Now, should this get scouted by Vortix, we could possibly see some trade coming up. He's going to go for a trade network. Beautiful positioning, by the way. Protecting that gold mine, even the stone mine in the back of that forest as well. But the point here is that Beasty goes for a council hole, so if he's pushing military at the beginning of Feudal Age, it's likely going to be the longbow play. And Vortix could deal with that using either sofas or the Malian scouts, which could open up an option for a trade being defended well by him.
I mean, the bigger issue he has is he has no way of stopping Vortix from being greedy if he wants to here. This council play makes sense, but because of that aforementioned landmark placement by Vortix, he's created blocker points on both sides that would access his gold vein. I don't even know if Beasty can sneak in on the north side of the TC.
Yeah, I doubt so, and honestly, looking at the forest placements for Vortix, he could easily wall his entire base such that it's impossible for Beasty to do anything when it comes to damage at the beginning, at least.
That honestly looks like you can maybe get one person through if they're slim enough, but anyone else is going to get shot at by the TC. I think this is going to be on the situation where Beasty probably builds like 4 lombos, walks over, doesn't find a way in, and then kind of has to fall back and just try to be greedy himself.
Yeah, now Beasty heavy on the wood department for the time being. Let's see how aggressive he's going to play this. Only 4 on foot, 6 on wood. Should be able to afford a couple of longbowmen over here. But I guess the big question is, as I said, what Vortix is going to do here. Because if Beasty's heavy on the longbow department, that's a slow-moving army, and that could have a challenge contesting trade if Vortix decides to go for that.
Love the fact that Vortix stuck 6 on wood. This is going to give him enough to build a few production buildings, so we'll have options. He wants to get the mill down first, but he should probably collect enough, at least 150, so that if he wants to play this age, he can go for the stable opening. Otherwise, he just holds onto the wood and plays for a later timing.
Yeah, the lumber camp positioning is also very lovely here for Vortix. If you take a look, it's right next to the Saharan trade network, so it's very difficult for Beast to hit those lumberjacks, next to impossible to hit the gold miners, and it's a very condensed base overall. It looks like it's going to be a cattle-focused play, is it? No, that's wheelbarrow coming in.
Yeah, no, we're not gonna be in the car this early. I mean, it's nice down the line, but we calm down. We are only just
I got
in feudal
hyped.
age.
Come on.
It's kind of funny to like see English versus Malians, and then it's like, why are the English not the ones that have the obsession with beef? I can tell you as a Brit, we love our beef more than anything else usually.
I mean, I would have expected the English to have the ability to train sheep rather than cattle, though.
True. Oh, yeah. I mean, but that's more a Welsh thing, right? That's more a Welsh thing than an English thing. Problem is, whenever I just like see cat, oh wow, yeah. So he is going for the build, but it's not the king we talked about. This is an interesting pivot from Beasty.
It very much is. Gets scouted immediately by Vortix, so now Vortix knows what's up. It's gonna be a passive gameplay from Beasty, very eco-focused. This is the moment where Vortix not only could trade, but he probably has to, because otherwise he's going to start falling behind in eco. And the reaction for the time being is just a range to deal with those few longbows.
Yeah. You have to, right? Like your opponent, like you said, he should go trade, but you have to address the threat first. And the cool thing about going javelin throwers is, you do have the ability to kind of sneak in and fire off at villages on the deer that BC's now set up that second TC on. So we'll have to keep an eye out and see if that becomes a possibility. But for now, Vortix is the one frustrated by the two lone longbows in the back.
Yeah, beautiful angle here from Beasty. He snuck past that trade network and he's shutting down the gold mine for a couple of minutes. And honestly, that's great value because Vortix was heavy on the gold. He was very heavy on the gold. Makes me feel like he might even be considering Castle Age.
Man, this is just tough to watch for Vortix. Like, I love the idea behind the Saharan Trade Network's position for, like, coverage in the future, for kind of this blocker effect. The problem he just realized is one people often discover when they make these type of plays. If you put it nowhere near your garrison force, nobody's going to garrison in time to punish raiders.
Exactly. Oh, this one lonely javelin thrower, though, dealing with the two longbows. Vortix knows fully well what Beasty's up to. He sees that it's only one or two longbows we're looking at. He also sees the second town center. And critically, he spots the double stable play. Because this is the surprise that Beasty was holding up for him. He wanted to go heavy on the horseman department, possibly punish even in feudal age.
But you can see Beasty's not like all in on this timing, right? He's got double TC to scale. You also did just see that correctly. He's starting to set up farms at his primary TC. This is usually indicative of someone aiming towards Castle Age with this kind of distraction in feudal, if you will.
Oh, Scout gets away. That's critical for Vortix. Like
that, I'm pretty sure that's illegal. Like, aren't English TCs meant to be Gatling guns? Like, nothing should ever live?
Well, it was two Wallies and the Scout is almost dead, so...
Oh, beauty. Absolute beauty. So Young's that away, but Vortix has to be somewhat content. Like, he got pretty much all the info he needed. He saw the double stables you talked about. He knows it's double TC. And now he's confident that if he comes over the top of the Farimba, he should have mid-map control. And I think he might be right here.
Yeah, I agree. I fully agree with you. I think he got the pieces of information that he needed. Obviously, a lack of scout available will be a problem in the next 5 or so minutes if Beasty makes another tech switch. But obviously, Vortix can always add a new scout if he wants to, so for the time being, this was fine. And speaking of scouting, Beasty also sees the Castle Age landmark, the Farimba garrison, being placed by Vortix. He may have even seen that it's being built by 10 villagers, so he should know that Vortix is rushing Castle Age as much as possible.
You have to consider what the options are for Vortix, right? More javelin throwers could be on the table, but Donzos or even Musafadi warriors, in theory, could be somewhat answered by Lombo horseman mass. And the reason that's important is you have to remember Vortix, he's only secured 1 gold vein so far. He's now moving for a secondary, but it is out to the side of his base. So Beasty could look to exploit this as the game goes on.
Yeah, he could also exploit the fact that he's on 2 TCs versus Vortix is on 1. So, sure enough, there is some passive gold generation here for Vortix, but over time, especially with the increased efficiency of English farming, the economy is going to be substantially better for Beasty. So, he doesn't need to make a crazy push. And is there a white tower coming up?
It should be, because it's double TC, but it's also what it's securing. Additional gold, I think afterwards he's maybe no.
Ooh.
Wow, okay, this is insanely greedy out of BC. Triple TC Castle Age.
Oh, he's also utilizing the fact that the King's Palace has been changed in the recent balance patch. It's no longer a 2500 HP structure. It used to be the lowest HP landmark in the game. Now it's a standard 5000 HP. So back in the days when it was lower HP, it was a little bit more difficult to justify placing it to the front because it was so easy to destroy. Now it's much more challenging, so Beastyqt can justify placing it to the front, and looks like, as you said, he's gonna play very greedy, seeing that Vortix isn't really about to put up a lot of pressure here.
It's kind of an interesting pivot. I think if Beasty was first to Castle Age, it's probably a white tower, right? Because then you can get the advantage of fast push cavalry with the knights coming out every 17 seconds. But because he's so far behind, and because Beasty's double stables play got scouted, he's expecting that element to get countered. So you might as well just double down on eco, and we can see it's ticked the box because Vortix did start building Donzos to answer cavalry that isn't coming.
Yeah, that's actually a lovely bait and switch by Beasty. He went for the double stables. We will never know whether he stopped or didn't even start producing horsemen in Feudal Age because he knew that it was scouted. Or was it just a complete bait to make Vortix believe that there is going to be horsemen or possibly knights coming? For the time being, Beast is going to get away with the greed because, don't forget, Vortix did lose his scout, so right now he's got no idea what's going on inside the base of Beasty.
And we are seeing a few horsemen from Beasty, so he will just kind of flex a few, try to force a reaction, right? Because we know how many Donzos have been built. Beasty is now only discovering that detail. He's going to discover it the hard way. Eat projectiles, sucker. God, that looks painful. I mean, even if it's Donzos, that's the one thing that makes them so annoying, right? Is there aren't many units that can so trivially snipe scouts at early phases, but Donzos definitely rates amongst one of them.
Now, Beasty's army isn't very flashy right now. He's only at 800 army value as compared to 4,500. The problem is that pushing any angle here is challenging for Vortix. Walls are coming up for Beasty, he's got a network of castles, and he can also pop out a bunch of longbowmen very fast. So, oh, he could actually sneak by though.
He's definitely going to sneak by. That's just one villager. One villager who's also now going to suck on javelins.
Well, there it goes. Scout actually being hidden in the stealth forest. That's a lovely detail. It's gonna give him perfect vision. If Vortix wants to punish, now is the time to go, because Beasty only has 2 horsemen, 7 longbows, and even if he pops out a bunch of longbows from the council hall, that will be insufficient. He's up against a bunch of javelin throwers.
He's gathering a lot of gold as well, so he's really leaning into the tech upgrades, undermesh and the likes. I mean, if he can actually hold, which he should be able to against this mass, and get up to 20 longbows, Vortix is kind of in a bind, right? Because the javelins can't initially reach, they have to get into range, and the Donzos are inherently countered by the longbows. It sounds really stupid, but Beasty essentially can counter the entire army with 1 unit.
Yeah, very well could be a thing, and don't forget, he's sitting on 3 TCs. Now, Vortix isn't idle himself. He's got 3 pit mines now, and more importantly, he's picking up relics. He's got a 3rd relic coming in already, and that's actually a great way to offset some of the eco difference that there is between the 2 players. So, as much as the villager, or as big as the villager lead looks like for Beasty, in reality, the difference in ecos is not that huge.
Well, in fairness, Donzos are meant to counter cavalry. It's just usually expect them to need to get a little bit closer than this. I did love the fact that PC started off with just 2 horsemen for denying vision. It didn't work out there, but the idea is good. And now the pressure's going to come in on that King's Palace, that, as you said, had its HP pool doubled. Won't be a quick torch down like it used to be.
Yeah, exactly. That's a big thing. If this was the old King's Palace, this would be a building done by now. You look at that. 1,000 HP lost in just a couple of seconds. Still, though, it's not like Beasty has a huge standing army here, so we could see Vortix commit. Network of castles will be there. Scout gets picked off. Cavalry, though, insufficient in numbers.
This is problematic. I mean, he can't charge at all. He's only got 2 stables as well. So CC will survive, but pressure is now on him, right? He doesn't want to waste time repairing it because, you know, the plus and negative is, like, compared to King's Pass, it takes a lot longer to repair the old one anyway. You've now got to repair over 3k HP. That's going to be a lot of idle time that Beasty can't afford.
Exactly, and that's the big thing. He's got 26 villagers lead, but when you have 10-15 idols all the time, then you will still have the weaker eco, especially because Vortix is capping sacred sites. He's going for relics. He's got an insanely good eco for a player playing 1 TC.
I think Beasty's trying to make a social commentary on the housing crisis in England right now. Okay, there we go, got fixed. He was blocked out for a bit there, so was missing out on production of, I think, horsemen as well as villagers were on hold. So we'll slow him down a little bit. Vortix will take every little edge you can get with this transition to cavalry that you're talking about now coming in. A transition that Beasty really isn't ready for.
Yeah, that's a big thing. And there is a mass production available for Vortix. He's got 5 stables working. DC wasn't even repaired over here, so Beast's got to be very cautious. Could easily be torched down. He's gonna rally the forces, but Vortix knows fully well that this is not a huge army.
You're up against mass Donzos. Your options are counters to Donzo or more cavalry. He's trying to get both ticked. I understand from BC's perspective, but it's why the Donzos were able to finish what they started, or they're going to try to anyway. Commitment into the cavalry line to force the fight. And a lot of villagers coming over. Now, Beasty is sacrificing a lot of eco to just try and keep this up. Might end up sacrificing some villagers in the process. This is from the main army Vortix going down. But most of Beasty's army could be cleaned up afterwards due to the fact of how late the sofas were to the party.
Yeah, but honestly, there's the next batch of javelin throwers, sofas coming in as well, and there's 20 idols for Beasty right now. Keeps repairing that landmark for the time being, but most of the cavalry for Beasty is gone, and that's the alarming detail. Most of his army now is just longbows, so the sofas could actually reign supreme, although there is a reinforcement of horsemen coming in very soon for Beasty, so for now he lives to see another day. Still though, Vortix confining him into his base, and that allows Vortix to gain massive map control.
And the key detail here is that Beasty needs to survive this like 2 more times to then be comfortable. Because someone that is going his way behind this is, as an English player, you start to flesh out those farms, right? They get great food gathering rates. That's where Vortix can begin to fall behind incessantly. Like, it's not just the fact that he's losing on the villager count, it's the fact that Beasty's villagers become more efficient at this phase of the game. And that passive gold trickle feels less relevant.
Exactly. Eventually, Vortix is going to start struggling with food. When you run out of berries, when you run out of hunt, you will have to make a farm transition, and that's going to slow down Vortix's momentum. That's the window that Beast is waiting for. His farming eco is already set up, he's got a lot of backup food to work with. Vortix needs to make something happen before he runs out of available food.
I think he can afford a cattle switch, right? At this stage, because he's essentially pivoting into sofas, he needs more food, less gold.
True.
He'll just have mainly the Farimba pushing. Farimba that, is a bit more expensive than it was in the previous patch. But I think with the way he's scaling his eco, worst case scenario, he just starts spawning the cows. We're back at this again, by the way. Allergic to ramps. Which is weird, considering the first game from Vortix. Crossbows. Not many out right now. Clash is going to be forced. Village is going to be pulled. BT says all arms on deck. Again, conscription laws going here in England. A wraparound of a few cavalry units is going to force a grand migration away. So Vortix decides to dive past the King's Palace to snipe out the army. And the idle time alone, I mean, it's more or less half of what the advantage is for Beasty. Vortix has to be happy with this.
Yeah, more than happy. He's pushing that army all the way back inside the base, and that's a tremendous amount of idle time. Decides to just completely ignore that TC and dive this. Donzos massacring the cavalry here from Beasty, and once again, it's a 3-to-1 army advantage for Vortix. He doesn't care about the town center. He doesn't care about the network of castles. He's just diving deep and massacring villagers.
I mean, these sofas are doing God's work right now. Or at least they're sending someone up into God's way in the hands. Beasty in trouble, at risk of finding himself up against the wall. Vortix is gonna get the second game. We could have a very speedy lower bracket finals on our hand.
Whoa, what a game once again by Vortix. And it has to come down to those key scouting details that he has gotten, the information coming at the crucial times. Spotting the double stable, spotting the second town center being placed, then the King's Palace. And as you see, Beast had a massive villager lead, but, well, here comes the passive gold generation for Vortix. And I think the thing that we need to credit Vortix for is how well he used his map control. So many times we see players seeing a greedy opponent, and they start making army trying to punish that, but they don't use the map to their advantage. They don't pick up the relics, the sacred sites. Vortix did all of that, and that's the thing that offset the villager lead that Beasty had.
And another big thing to his credit that's got to be highlighted here is like the reason those sofas look so visceral is the patience Vortix show. Some players would have rushed in their sofas in small quantities, but instead Vortix not only massed up to 10 plus sofas, he waited until he got imported armor. He got the extra 2 armor on those sofas, and you saw how unkillable they became. Even diving past TCs, diving as deep as they want to go. And the crazy part is Vortix, there were things he could have even done better to exploit this more, right? Like, consider the fact he chose to attack the King's Palace as opposed to the secondary TC on the left side, right? He's essentially so far ahead and so confident in his game strategy that he can kind of afford to take what look like suboptimal fights just to keep Beastie stuck in the